I worked up this practice sheet on exposures in preparation for Thomas's test on Tuesday. And I'm going to try to explain how to do this correctly. Now, the thing you need to understand first is when the camera is getting more light or less light. That's kind of the foundation of the whole thing. And there are three factors that determine when the camera gets more or less light. One of them is your aperture, the other is your shutter and your ISO. So think of it like this, starting with the aperture. If you're at an f-stop of 1.4, that means that the iris is about as big as it gets, right? Now, the further you go down the line to all the way to an f22, the smaller that iris hole will be. It's going to be very small in f22. It's letting in hardly any light. That's what you would use on a very sunny day, right? You don't want to overexpose, so you want to just keep that iris as small as you can get it. However, if you're in a dark room, you want it as much light as possible to hit that sensor or film and open it as much as you can. That would be your lowest f-stop, a 1.4. So once you get that concept, right, of the size of the iris determines how much light the camera is getting, you're well on your way. Now, same thing with the shutter. If your shutter is open for 1/8 of a second, it's going to allow a lot more light to hit that sensor or film than if it were only open for 1/1000th of a second, right? That makes sense. If it's open for much more time, more light's going to get in. Okay. Now, the ISO is a little bit different. It refers more to the sensitivity of your sensor or the film. But think of it like this. The higher the sensitivity, the more sensitive your ISO is, the more light can be detected. So 6400 is going to be much more sensitive, allow much more light to be absorbed than if it were an ISO of 100. So the higher you go with the ISO, the more light it will receive. So think of it like that. Now, we'll run through a few of these. And once you've got that concept down, which I know I didn't explain very thoroughly, if you look at Thomas's exposure PowerPoint presentation, he explains it much better. But get that concept down because that's fundamental. You won't be able to do this if you don't understand that. Now, the rest is just pretty straightforward, actually. Take a look at your problem. Here's our little problem here. And what we're going to try to do is make one side equal to the other side, your basic algebra. Always start on the side with the blank. That's where you need to start. Always start on that side. And then what you do is you just simply compare your known factors from this side to that side. So on this side, we're trying to figure out, okay, is an f5.6, is that allowing more light or less light compared to an f4? The answer is the iris is smaller at an f.6 than an f4, so it's allowing less light by a factor of 1. And you know that it's 1 because if you go down here to your little chart and you go to an f5.6, it's 1 factor less light than an f4. So -1. Then you go to your other known factor. In this case, it's the shutter speed. Over here, it's open for 1/250th of a second, and over here, it's at 1/60th of a second. So that means that it's allowing less light to come in at only being open for 1/250th of a second, then 1/60th of a second by a factor of, in this case, 2. And we know that if we go down here and we look, you start at shutter speed of 1/250, it's 2 stops difference. So in this case, a -2 for a total of -3. So what you need to do is you need to compensate on your ISO by +3, right? So that this side equals this side. So what's going to allow more light, more sensitivity in this case because it's an ISO, by a factor of 3 from 800. So if we go down here and we look at our chart, we take it 1, 2, 3, 6400. So our ISO is 6400. That's what goes in right here. All right. So hopefully that makes sense. Once you grasp that basic concept of more light, less light, and then you just simply compare from the blank side of the equation to the other side, compare what your known factors are. Are they more or less? You add them up, you compensate, and you're done. So we'll do a couple of more. So in this case, we don't know our f-stop. We look at 1/250, more or less light than 1/500. In this case, more light is going to come in because it's open for longer. So more by a factor of 1. And then we look at our other known factor, which is our ISO. 1600 is more sensitive than 400, right? 400, so 400 by how much? A factor of 400, 800, 1600, more sensitive by a factor of 2, for a total of +3. So this needs to be -3 to compensate. Well, what's 3 stops less light than an f8? And we go down here and we look. 3 stops less, 1, 2, 3. An f22, and thus our answer. All right, we'll do one more. Hopefully you're getting it. f8, f4, less light, right? Less light by a factor of f4, let's see, f5.6, f8, a factor of 2. Oh shit, I did that on the wrong side. Always start on this side. So f4 is more sensitive by a factor of 2 than an f8. And then we know our ISO, which is 1600, is more sensitive than 800 by a factor of 1, for a total of +3. So in here, -3. So what's going to allow less light in your shutter by a factor of 3? And that's 500, 1,000, 2,000, 4,000. Hence your answer is 4,000. And this is the mistake that I think everybody makes the most. I know I do. I just did it. Always start on the side with the blank and then start doing your math. If you can manage to do that and you understand these things, more light or less light, you'll do well on this exam. So I'll leave these up here for a second, so if you want to practice, you can look at them, but Tuesday morning, 9 a.m., I will come in and we can go through these, and hopefully by Thomas's exam, you'll have it down. Good luck.